My name is Captain Lauren Briggs. I've served in the U.S. Army for over 15 years, 3 deployments, 2 promotions, and 1 medal I keep tucked away where no one can ask about it. Out there, I command respect. At home, I barely exist. To my family, I've always been the one who left, not the one who served or sacrificed or made it out. Just the one who broke the unspoken rule of staying small and agreeable. We haven't spoken much in the last 7 years. A few cold holiday texts, a couple of missed birthdays, and silence, mostly. Silence has always been easier with them. It fills the space without demanding explanation. So when a wedding invitation arrived in my on-base mailbox last month, I stared at it longer than I care to admit. Clean white envelope, gold trim, no return address. But I knew that handwriting. It was my mother's. And inside, a card with names printed in elegant script. Caleb Briggs and Addison Pierce invite you to celebrate their union. My brother. The same one who once told me I'd never be good with people. The one who stopped calling after my second tour. I hadn't even known he was engaged. No personal message. Just a date, a time, and a line at the bottom that read, "Formal attire requested. No, Captain. No, Lauren. Just Briggs." As if that name alone was enough. The envelope had no return address, but the handwriting gave it away instantly. My mother always wrote, like someone who had something to prove. Even her loops were sharp, like she couldn't help turning every curve into a warning. I held it in my hands for a while, just looking at my name. Lauren Briggs. No rank, no title, nothing to acknowledge who I've become or what I've done. Just the name I was born with, stripped bare like a factory reset. It wasn't the first time. At my cousin's graduation, they introduced every guest with their accomplishments. Doctor? Professor? Even senior analyst. When they got to me, it was just, "Lauren's here. She travels a lot." Someone chuckled like it was a joke, and no one corrected them. The year before that, Christmas dinner ended with my brother's fiancée asking if I still did that soldier thing. I remember smiling, polite and exhausted. I'd just come back from Baghdad. My boots were still scuffed with desert dust, and I spent most of the night helping her carry dishes because no one else offered. My medals have never seen the inside of my mother's house. She has framed baby photos of all 3 of us in the hallway, but mine stops at age 12. No high school graduation. No commissioning ceremony. Nothing in uniform. Just a soft blur of childhood. Then nothing. As I read the invitation again, I noticed the details were all immaculate. Calligraphy names. Gold foil border. RSVP website. With a password. Every line screamed celebration. Every line also screamed who belonged and who didn't. There was no note inside. Just a single printed insert. Formal attire requested. No uniforms. That was the part that caught in my throat. I hadn't even decided whether I'd go, but somehow, they'd already decided how I should show up if I dared to come. It was calculated. I knew it. My mother never left anything to chance. And if there was one thing she feared more than scandal, it was me in dress blues, standing in full view of her friends. I folded the card slowly and slipped it back into the envelope. My hand stayed there for a while, resting on the seal like it might open again and say something different. But it didn't. I hadn't made up my mind, not yet. But something inside me was shifting. Quiet. Heavy. Like the first sign of a storm. I didn't decide right away. The invitation sat on my desk for 3 days, unopened after that first look. I buried it under files, like it might lose its weight if I couldn't see it. But it didn't. It lingered. Followed me into briefings and debriefs, into the quiet hum of evenings when the bass finally went still. It wasn't about the wedding. It was about what I'd allow them to erase again. They didn't want me to come. Not really. Not unless I came smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. They wanted a silhouette, not a presence. And that was exactly why I needed to show up. I booked a flight under my personal account. Middle seat, 1 layover, no military ID used. I didn't tell anyone. No goodbyes, no announcement, just one line to my aide. Out for the weekend, no comms. The night before the flight, I pulled my uniform out of the closet, pressed it until the creases were sharp, ran a thumb along each ribbon, each bar. My nameplate caught the light. It read, Briggs, but on this fabric it meant something different. Packing was simple. One carry-on, civilian clothes for the flight, dress blues folded with care. I didn't need anything else. I wasn't going to celebrate. I was going to occupy the space they thought they'd reclaimed. The morning of departure, I stood in front of the mirror in a plain black shirt, hair tied back. No makeup, no smile, just a calm, steady face staring back. I looked like someone who knew exactly what she was walking into. And I did. It wasn't combat, not in the usual sense. But family, when they turn on you, know how to cut without leaving marks. I wasn't going to dodge it this time. I was going to walk in, head held high, and let them feel the full weight of what they'd tried so hard to deny. I wasn't coming to forgive. I wasn't coming to be forgiven. I was coming to be seen. The rehearsal dinner was held at a golf club just outside town, the kind of place with valet parking, chilled champagne on arrival, and a dress code that whispered exclusivity. My table card said L. Briggs, tucked near the kitchen door, where servers pushed through with trays of finger foods and filtered smiles. No captain, no full name, just a letter and a last name. I arrived 5 minutes early. No one greeted me, no one offered a drink. I walked the perimeter of the room like I was scanning a mission site, then took my seat quietly, while others trickled in with laughter and light hugs. My mother passed by my table once. She didn't stop. She smoothed a napkin at someone else's place and smiled like she hadn't noticed me. Caleb, my brother, nodded in my direction from across the room. Not a wave, not a word, just a nod. Like I was an old colleague, he didn't want to explain. Addison, his fiancée, made her entrance loud and dazzling. She wore white, of course, and floated from group to group with a champagne flute, and a smile practiced in every mirror of her life. When she got to my side of the room, she leaned over and said, "Lauren, right? So glad you could make it. We weren't sure if you'd be out, wherever it is you are these days." I smiled just enough. DC, mostly. She blinked. "Oh, right." And then turned to greet the florist. The conversation at my table stayed safe and shallow. Someone asked if I'd ever been to Italy. Someone else joked about their dog being afraid of the vacuum. No one asked me what I did. No one brought up the military, but the silence around it was loud enough to fill the room. An uncle leaned over during the salad course and said, "Still doing the army thing?" I nodded once. "Wow," he said, like I'd just told him I collected stamps. "Must be hard for a woman." I didn't flinch. I just cut into the arugula like he hadn't spoken. Later, when they toasted the couple, everyone clinked glasses. I raised mine without comment. The groom looked my way briefly, then turned to whisper something in Addison's ear. She laughed too hard for it to be polite. Through it all, I kept my posture straight, my voice even, my face unreadable. Let them see what they wanted to see. Let them feel superior in their little world of wine pairings and curated playlists. I wasn't here for their comfort. I was here to remember what it felt like to hold the line. The real battle wasn't tomorrow. It had already begun. The church was picture perfect, all white stone and stained glass with petals scattered like promises down the aisle. I arrived early, as instructed, the first to walk through the arched front doors. My uniform was pressed, metals gleaming, shoes silent on the marble floor. I didn't come to make a statement. I came because this was who I was. And if that made someone uncomfortable, it wasn't my problem anymore. The seating chart stood on a gold easel near the entrance, names printed in calligraphy on thick cream cardstock. I scanned the list slowly. Once, then twice. My name wasn't there. Only when I leaned in did I see it. Scribbled in pen, crooked and small. L. Briggs Table 14. Rear exit. No last-minute change, no apology. Just a message, disguised as logistics. The pews were filling now. People I hadn't seen in years brushed past with polite nods and tight smiles. No one asked where I'd been. No one said, "It's good to see you." I found my seat near the back, tucked behind a pillar and two camera tripods. My view of the altar was partial. The programs hadn't made it this far. The usher asked if I was with the catering staff. I didn't answer, just sat down and folded my hands in my lap. My spine stayed straight. My jaw locked into place. I wasn't going to cry. Not here. The organ began to play. The bridal party filed in. I stayed seated, watching through the cracks of the people they had chosen to include. Then the priest called for the immediate family to come forward for a blessing. I rose, instinct more than thought. But before I could move, a hand caught my forearm. It was my mother. Her voice was low, almost gentle. "This part isn't for you," she said. I looked at her, then at the altar, then back at the hand. She hadn't yet removed. I nodded once, just enough for her to think she'd won something. Then I sat back down. The blessing moved on without me, but something in me didn't sit back down with the rest. It stayed standing, quiet and tall, waiting. The reception hall glittered with chandeliers and curated joy. Every table was dressed to match the flowers. The place cards shimmered in scripted gold, but mine just said L. Briggs again, shoved beside the DJ booth where the sound crew kept their gear. I sat through dinner without much conversation. A few glances, some polite nods, but mostly silence. The server skipped me for wine, then returned after checking the list, saying softly, "Non-drinking guest, right?" I didn't correct him. I just reached for the bottle left unattended at the next table and poured myself a glass. Across the room, Caleb laughed at something, hand on Addison's back like he was guiding her through a parade. She sparkled under the lights, spinning through conversations, untouchable in every sense. The mic feedback came sharply and suddenly. Addison stood in the center of the room, champagne flute in hand. That same smile she wore like armor. "To love," she began. "To family, to loyalty, and to surprises." People chuckled politely, unsure where she was going. Then she turned toward me. "Even my big sister made it," she said, glass lifted. "All the way from wherever she's stationed now, still guarding secret doors or whatever it is you do." The laughter that followed was hesitant at first, then freer. "Addison, let it build. Let's give a hand to the silent sentinel. Always watching, never speaking." It wasn't just a jab. It was a swing. And they all let it land. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I stared at my untouched dessert and counted the seconds. Then came the voice. Not mine. "I'd like to say something," the best man said, stepping into the light. Gavin Carter. He wore the suit well. Tie loosened just enough. Smile. Easy. He looked like any other groomsman. Until he turned to face me. He stood straighter now. "This woman," he said, pointing to me, "is not just someone's sister. She's not just a guest. She's the reason I'm alive." The room shifted. Glasses froze midair. Forks stopped halfway to the plates. Addison's smile twitched, confused. "Captain Lauren Briggs," he continued, "dragged me out of a collapsed safe house in Kandahar, carried me through smoke and fire with a busted leg and shrapnel in her own side. She didn't ask for thanks. She never even mentioned it again." Gasps, audible now. Chairs creaked. Someone near the front lowered their phone slowly. "She's a decorated officer, a leader, and the reason I get to stand here today. So before you make another joke about secret doors or silent types, know that she's saved more lives than most of us in this room will ever touch." He turned fully to me then, saluted, crisp, formal, like I was still in command. "Ma'am," he said, voice clear, "thank you." Silence swept the hall like a wave pulling the air out of the room. Addison lowered her glass. My mother's face drained of color. Caleb looked down at his shoes. I met Gavin's eyes. No words passed, just a look. A weight lifted, and all around us, something began to shift. No one spoke. The kind of silence that settles deep, where even the air feels held in place. Glasses hovered midair. Conversations died on open lips, and all eyes turned to me. Gavin lowered his salute and stepped back without another word. It was enough. More than enough. I didn't rise. I didn't bow my head. I simply held his gaze, then looked out at the sea of faces now seeing me for the first time. From table 3, a man in a navy uniform stood slowly. His back straightened. His hand rose in a measured salute. Then, another followed. A woman in a marine dress jacket, silver hair, tears in her eyes. Then 2 more. Then 5. No music played. No speeches resumed. It was just the sound of respect, reclaiming the room. Addison had backed toward the cake table, unsure of where to look. My mother stood frozen by the floral arch, lips parted but saying nothing. Caleb didn't meet my eyes. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, letting the moment be what it was. Not revenge, not vindication, just truth, standing quietly in a room that had finally run out of excuses. This wasn't about making them feel small. It was about no longer letting them make me feel smaller. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. She found me in the lobby after the reception, near a wall of framed wedding photos that didn't include mine. Her pearls were off, her shoes swapped for flats, but the mask was still there, polished and tight. "You made your point," she said, voice low but strained. "No need to keep dragging it out. The family's image still matters." I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once shushed my questions at the dinner table and told me to let the men talk. "You're worried about image," I said. "I spent years being silent for yours." She folded her hands, as if that might keep them from shaking. "We didn't know what your rank meant, what your job entailed." I shook my head. "You knew. You just didn't care." She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came. Just a breath, a pause, and then silence again. I stepped closer, but not to comfort her. "I'm not going to disappear to make you comfortable anymore," I said. "That era's over." Then I turned to leave. No dramatic exit, no parting shot, just a woman finally walking out of a conversation she no longer needed to finish. I retired 6 months after the wedding. No press release, no ceremony, just a final signature, a quiet walk down the hallway, and a long exhale as I stepped into civilian life. I moved to a small coastal town in Maine, the kind where people wave from porches and forget to lock their doors. I bought a cottage with chipped paint and a yard full of wildflowers that refused to stay in line. Most mornings, I walked to the water with coffee in hand. No boots, no salute. Just the sound of the tide and my own breath, steady and unhurried. It took time to stop expecting orders. I started working with local vets, nothing formal, just coffee meetups, rides to appointments, long talks on porch steps. A lot of them carry ghosts, same like me, but out here, there's space to let them speak. For the first time in years, I sleep through the night. No alerts, no drills. Just the soft rhythm of waves outside my window and the quiet certainty that I'm safe. I didn't know how loud the world had been until it went still. I keep my uniform in the back of a closet, not because I'm hiding it, because I don't need it to prove anything anymore. That part of me isn't erased. It's honored, then set down gently. Sometimes, a kid from the village stops by to ask about the medals or the patches on my old gear. One asked if I missed the army. I told him, some parts, not the silence after. They call me Miss Briggs here. Not Captain, not ma'am. Just Lauren, the woman who fixes fences, makes good coffee, and listens when it matters. That's enough. My mother never called. My brother never followed up. And that's fine. I stopped measuring my worth by what they refused to see. I wasn't erased. I was reborn. on my own terms, in my own time. And this life, quiet and real, is more than enough. It was just after sunset when I heard a knock on my front porch. A local boy, maybe 9 or 10, stood there holding a loaf of bread from the village bakery. He shifted from foot to foot, eyes wide like he had a question he wasn't sure he should ask. "Were you really a soldier?" he said finally. His voice cracked on the last word like it was too big for him. I smiled and nodded. "Yeah, I was." He looked down at the boots by my door, scuffed and quiet. Then he backed up at me, like he was seeing something he couldn't quite explain. "Cool," he whispered, then turned and ran before I could say anything else. I stood there for a while after he left. The sky was streaked with color, and the air smelled like salt and pine. My hands rested on the railing, steady, at peace. There was a time when I wanted them all to say my name, to say it right, to say it with pride and understanding. Now, I just want them to say it with care. Because once someone sees who you are, really sees you, they never forget. Not because you forced them to, but because they finally understood they never should have looked away. Respect isn't loud. It doesn't chase people down or demand applause. It just stands tall and waits. And eventually, it is seen. These days, when people say my name, they don't rush it. They pause. They weigh it. They remember. Not because they love me, but because now they know better than to try and erase me.